Today's psalm, this quote is from that psalm, "Happy are those whose strength is in you, whose heart are the highways of Zion." So, in other words, we're always happy when we're out looking, just, expecting God to show up in our lives. It makes us happy to do that and expect it. So that's how they were thinking about when they left to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Now, here is a beautiful picture of the Milky Way, because it's really a reminder that, yes, God does live in heaven. God's here too. And when we look up, we can see how majestic is your name in all the earth. You've set your glory above the heavens. And then when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? And we know that God does care for us, but God cares for all of this other stuff too. Everything God made. Okay, so we're ready to go to Jerusalem for the Passover. And this person is in Nazareth. He's ready to get his family together, and they're going to start off on their pilgrimage to Jerusalem. There they are getting ready to go. And they probably would take a donkey or something with them to help them carry their bags and food and things. And they would go through the wilderness on the way to Jerusalem. Does that look like the wilderness to you? Yeah, it looks like desert, right? But in the Bible, when we read about the wilderness, that's what the wilderness is going to look like. It's very dry and desolate. So they would pass scenery like this, and there would be maybe a Herod's fort up on the hill, because Herod was always building stuff. So they would always be aware that the Romans were occupying their land. And they would maybe pass through Jericho or another place that was an oasis. You see how green it is here? That's because there's springs in this area, so that people could actually live there. And this is one of the oldest settlements in the world, was at Jericho, because there was water there. So, and there's some stories about Jesus in Jericho too that we hear. But this story, in this story, they might pass through a place where they could refresh their water supply and that sort of thing. So finally, they get to Jerusalem. Now this is how Jerusalem looked back in 2010 when I was there. But it was probably that same kind of light. You come over the hill from all that desert and you look and whoa, there it is. It's like amazing to see where you've been headed. All of a sudden just spread out before you on the hill across from where you're looking. Because this is taken from the Mount of Olives. And you see, have you ever heard Jerusalem the Golden? We've got that hymn, Jerusalem the Golden. That's because it does look gold. In the late afternoon, everything turns gold because of the rocks that everything's made out of. It literally turns gold. You can see these are just apartment buildings and a Russian Orthodox church, but you can see how everything just glows when the light's right. So here we are, and this is where the temple would have been. They were headed for the temple. So today, there's the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque up there on top of this big platform. That's all that's left of the temple. But this whole thing used to be a gigantic temple that Israelites believe God dwelt there. And you would go through a gate. This gate was not in Bible times, but they would pass through some gates to get into the city. This was built like back in medieval times. And these are the original steps to the temple. So in the Bible, the Psalms, there are some Psalms that say the Psalms of Ascent, the Psalms that people would say as they went up these very steps. And one of them goes, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. And as they say these Psalms, they're going up these steps. And they're kind of hard to see because they're so worn out. But they're there and they've been excavated, so we're blessed to be able to see them. you can see how huge the rocks are that the Temple Mount is made out of. So it's a quite impressive. And these are the gates that would have gone into the temple courtyards. You can see how big they are too. But they're walled up now because the platform is way up high. See how big this rock is? That's part of when the Romans tore down the temple. This is the size rock they had to knock down, and there are just piles of them still left from 70 years after Jesus was born in the temple and Jerusalem was destroyed.
Evan, where are you going, boy?
Bathroom.
Can you hold it?
We'll go now if you gotta go.
Announce it to the world.
Well, Johnny asked, right? So today, if you're a Jewish person, you still want to go to the temple. That's something you still want to do, but the temple's not there. So you go to the western wall, which is what's left of the temple. It's the wall that held the big platform that the temple was built on. You remember the Dome of the Rock up there? Well, the wall, the huge wall that's below that is where the Jewish people go to pray. And see, these are children getting ready to go to the western wall to pray. And here you can see the wall. See Al-Aqsa down there, and the Dome of the Rock is over here. But this whole wall is where the Jewish people pray. They pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They pray for the return of the temple. And do you see how it's divided? And people over here and people over here. That's because the women pray in this area and the men pray in this area. They're separated. And this is the way to get into the Temple Mount itself. Now, even though the top is controlled by the Muslim people, the entrance is controlled by the Jewish people. So this is a conflict whenever there's unease in Jerusalem. Sometimes they'll close off the access to the mosque, and then everybody gets really upset. Okay, here's another picture of the wall on the women's side. And you can see even the sparrow finds a home. These sparrows have made, they're on the greenery that's growing on the wall. And in today's psalm, you'll hear that about the sparrows. Even sparrows find a home. And they're still there after all these years. And when you go, people stick notes in the wall. Like you write your prayer and you roll it up and you stick it in a little crevice in the wall so that your prayers are there with everybody else's on the wall. So Jewish people do it, Christian people do it. I guess anyone who goes to Jerusalem does it. And once a year, I found out, a person is assigned to go through and they clean them all out so there's room for more, and then they bury them. They don't read them, they just bury them. So mine's there somewhere, but I can't tell you which one it is now. Okay, so here you see the men praying and all the women praying at the wall. Now this is the Dome of the Rock. So now if you were Muslim, you would come here. This is the third holiest site for the Muslims in the world. And Al-Aqsa is a big, you can see it spreads way out here. So all the Muslims come to worship in this big building. And I was really lucky when I went, I could go inside. When you go inside, you have to take off your shoes like everybody else does and make sure your hands are washed. So there are big fountains so you can wash your hands, take off your shoes, and you go in and you're very reverent. Just like our church, you do the same thing for church. This is the Dome of the Rock, and it covers the rock that people believe the temple was over. When the temple was there and the priests would sacrifice animals, the rock that was that rock is inside this building. And the tradition says that, you know, all the chaos that God made creation out of is way under the earth. This is like a myth. And so if anything ever happened to that rock, all the chaos would come back. So it's the plug, it's the navel of the world that plugs up all the chaos, and then we have all of creation above. That's somebody's thought about this rock. But when you go in, which we can't go in anymore, but I could go in the first time I went to Jerusalem, way back in the 90s. There's a screen around the rock, but you can see the rock through the screen. It's pretty cool to get to see that. And see, here's one of the fountains. And here's a typical Muslim person who's there to worship, and Muslim children. And here's some more people there. And see, they're all there. They've probably gone in the Dome of the Rock, and maybe they've said some prayers in Al-Aqsa. And you see this tower right here, that's, what do you call it? It's the tower that 5 times a day someone goes up there and
Minaret.
makes a call to prayer, a minaret. And it's a very haunting melody that they sing it. So you hear that all day in Jerusalem. It's beautiful. Okay, here's the Temple Mount. We were there. We were able to go there. And olive trees. We had our Bible because we were looking to see, okay, where was Jesus on this map up here? So we are saying right there. And just as we were figuring that out, someone came and told us we could not have our Bibles up there because it's Muslim space. We had to put our Bible away. Now, Christians go to Jerusalem to go to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is here. And it's in a different part of town. It's built, there's the dome of it. It's built over the place that the Queen St. Helen, is it Helen of Constantinople, went there in about 300 years after Jesus lived to say, where did Jesus die and was buried and raised from the dead? This church covers all of that. It's huge. You see the bells. This is an entrance into the church. I think it's the main entrance. And because so many different groups have chapels inside that church and they can't agree on anything, guess who has the key? A Muslim family keeps the key for the Christians because the Christians who have chapels in there argue. So they count on the Muslim person to open the door every morning. And that family, it's been generations, that family passes that responsibility down. And inside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, there's so much stuff, but one thing you can see are all the crosses that pilgrims on pilgrimages to this building have carved through the centuries, ever since the 300s. So that's amazing. And here's some modern day pilgrims. They're probably Orthodox. You can see their very interesting clothes. But they've come all the way, and a lot of times you'll see groups carrying crosses with them on their pilgrimages.
Get Papa's lap. Go around and say, Papa.
Come on in.
The chairs are over there. It's too big. You go sit with Papa.
Now this, over the place where Jesus was resurrected, his tomb, is a little building inside of this huge building, and there's a little opening, and maybe you've heard me talk about this opening before. On Easter morning, they pass a light out of here. The light from the altar, and it spreads. Everybody out here has got candles, and it goes all the way out into the city. Lights, huge processions. And there's the light that is actually on the little altar there, inside of this little tiny building, where Jesus was buried and was raised. The tradition. So that's the end. Does